The day my brother got his acceptance letter to USC, my mom cried so hard she had to sit down on the kitchen floor. I stood in the doorway watching her. She was holding the letter with both hands, pressing it against her chest like it was something sacred. My dad was already on the phone with my uncle, his voice booming through the house. And my brother, he was 19, grinning that lazy grin he always had, just stood there soaking it all in like he'd expected nothing less. Nobody looked at me. I was 23. I'd been working at a mid-sized accounting firm for 14 months. I wasn't making a lot, but I was making enough. Enough that when my parents sat me down 3 weeks later and explained that financial aid had only covered about 60% of tuition and that they'd already promised my brother he could go, and that they just needed a little help to bridge the gap, I said yes. I said yes because I loved my brother. I said yes because I'd watched my parents work double shifts and weekend overtime for most of my childhood, and I knew what it cost them. I said yes because I thought naively, completely naively, that this was what family did. That was 4 years ago. His name was Eli. He was a film major. He had opinions about cinematography and almost never answered his phone. Here's what the arrangement looked like on paper. I would cover $800 a month toward his tuition and housing. My parents would handle the rest. Eli would graduate in 4 years, get a job, and eventually pay me back. My parents promised this. They said it like it was a plan they'd already worked out, like the numbers were already there on a spreadsheet somewhere. There was no spreadsheet. There was never a spreadsheet. What actually happened? The $800 became $1,100 when his meal plan went up. The live in the Nun 100 became $1,400 when he switched dorms sophomore year because his roommate was difficult to live with. I absorbed each increase the way you absorb a slow drip, barely noticing at first, then suddenly aware you're soaked. I opened a separate savings account after my first year at the firm. I was putting away $300 a month, thinking about maybe buying a condo in 3 or 4 years. Nothing fancy, just mine. That savings account never got past $4,200 before I had to pull from it. I didn't tell anyone about the account. I also didn't tell anyone how often I was eating rice and frozen vegetables for dinner by the third week of the month. I didn't tell anyone that I stopped going to my coworker's birthday thing because I'd done the math and I genuinely could not afford the Uber home. My parents assumed I was fine. I'm Robert's responsible one. I'm always been the responsible one. Eli assumed I was fine too. He texted me sometimes, funny videos mostly, memes, a photo here and there of whatever he was doing in LA. He never asked how I was. Not once in 4 years did he text me to ask how I was doing. I met someone my second year of all this. His name is Owen. He works in logistics. He's steady and kind, and he has this habit of making coffee for me before I'm even awake, just leaving it on the counter where he knows I'll find it. He knew about Eli, about the arrangement from the beginning. He didn't say anything negative about it, he just listened. Owen and I moved in together about 18 months into dating. I started contributing to rent on top of everything else, but we split things fairly, and honestly, it was the most financially stable I'd felt in a long time. We had a rhythm. It worked. Last spring, Owen proposed. We were at a park near our apartment, a Sunday afternoon, no big production. He'd brought a blanket and a thermos of coffee, and he just asked. Simple, quiet. I said yes before he finished the sentence. We set the date for early October. We kept the plan small. 40 people, a restaurant buyout, flowers that didn't cost a fortune. My mom cried again when I told her. Happy tears, she said. She and my dad said they'd contribute what they could. I told them it was okay. We had it covered. I meant it. I called Eli to tell him. He answered on the fourth try. That's awesome, he said. Then he asked me if I could help him cover something. He was doing an independent film project, a short film technically, but he'd been offered a chance to screen it at a small festival in Austin if he could get it finished. He needed equipment. He needed $1,800. I told him I didn't have it right now, that I was in the middle of wedding planning. He said, it's not that much. I didn't say anything for a second. He said, I mean, you've helped with way bigger stuff. I told him I'd think about it. I didn't say no. I should have said no. I didn't sleep well that night. Owen asked me what was wrong, and I said nothing, just tired. That was the first time I'd ever done that, not told him what was actually wrong. I don't know why. Maybe I was embarrassed. Maybe I didn't want to say out loud that my 23-year-old brother had just asked me for nearly $2,000 during the week I was trying to book a florist. I transferred $900, half. A compromise I made entirely with myself that he never asked for and didn't acknowledge beyond a single thumbs up emoji. The wedding was October 11th. My parents confirmed in August that they were coming. My mom was already talking about her dress. My dad asked twice about the parking situation at the venue. Eli said he'd be there, just needed to figure out his schedule closer to the date. 6 days before the wedding, my mom called me. She sounded strange. Not sad, not exactly. More like she was choosing her words very carefully in a way she almost never did. She said that she and my dad and Eli had been talking and they'd decided to take a trip to Nashville that weekend. My aunt and uncle had a lake house. There was a family reunion of sorts on my dad's side that had been planned for a while. She said she hadn't wanted to bring it up because she knew the timing was bad. I asked her when she found out. She said a few weeks ago. I sat down on the edge of the bed. She said they were sorry, that they hoped I understood, that family was family. She said Owen's family would be there and that the day would still be beautiful. She said she'd call me after. I didn't respond right away. I stayed on the phone for another 40 seconds or so. I know because I was staring at the timer on the call display, and then I said, okay, that was all. Okay, Owen was in the kitchen when I walked out. He looked at my face and said, what happened? I told him. He didn't say anything at first. He just set down what he was holding and came over and put both hands on my shoulders and looked at me straight on, like he was making sure I was still there. We're going to have the best day, he said. And you don't have to pretend this doesn't hurt. I cried in the bathroom for about 11 minutes. Then I washed my face and we ordered Thai food and watched something stupid on TV, and I didn't talk about my family for the rest of the night. The morning of the wedding was cold and clear. My best friend Stella had come in from Denver and she was in our apartment doing her makeup and playing music too loud and being so deliberately normal about everything that I almost lost it again just from gratitude. I got into the dress. It was simpler than I'd originally wanted. I'd made peace with that. Stella did the buttons up the back and then stood next to me in front of the mirror and said, "You look like someone who's about to make an excellent decision." I laughed. A real one. At the venue, Owen was already there when I arrived, which wasn't traditional. But we'd never cared about traditional. He saw me before I saw him, and I watched his whole face change. That part I'll keep. The ceremony was short. 40 people in a warm room, string lights, a friend officiating who'd been making us laugh since college. Owen's parents were in the front row. His mom was crying. His dad kept clearing his throat in that way that meant he was trying not to. The right side of the room was full. The left side, my side, had Owen's cousins who'd been asked to spread out, and Stella and two of my close friends from work, and my college roommate who'd driven 4 hours to be there. It was not empty, but it was not what it should have been. I noticed it once, right at the beginning, and then I made a choice to stop noticing it. We said our vows, we meant them. The reception was loud and warm, and we danced until the restaurant staff started stacking chairs in the corners. I had 2 glasses of champagne and ate an actual meal for the first time all day, and Owen spun me around to a song that wasn't even on the playlist, just something that came on. And I thought, this is the part that's real. This is what I'm keeping. It was close to midnight when I finally checked my phone. There were texts from various people, photos from guests, a voice memo from Owen's sister that was just 30 seconds of crowd noise and someone yelling, "I love you guys." And there was an Instagram notification my brother had posted, a group photo. Him, my parents, my aunt and uncle, some cousins I barely recognized, at what looked like a bonfire at the edge of a lake. Everyone was smiling. My mom had her arm around my dad. The caption said, "Family is everything." I stared at it for a long time. Owen was across the room talking to his dad. I didn't go get him. I just stood there by the bar, in my wedding dress, holding my phone. And then I thought about the $800, the $1,500, the $900, the $900 I'd sent 2 months ago because I hadn't been able to say no. I thought about the savings account that never got to grow. I thought about the frozen vegetables and the Uber I couldn't afford, and every phone call where I'd said I'm fine when I wasn't. I thought about the fact that nobody had asked. Not once. Not really. I put my phone face down on the bar. I went back to my husband. We danced one more song. But I didn't forget. I want to be clear about something because I think it matters. I am not a vindictive person. I don't enjoy conflict. I am the person who apologizes even when it isn't my fault, who over explains, who second guesses. I had spent 4 years being the person who showed up quietly, without being asked, without being thanked. What I did next wasn't rage. It wasn't even anger, exactly. It was something quieter than that. It was the feeling you get when you've been waiting for a bus that's 40 minutes late in the cold, and you finally look it up on the app and see that it's been rerouted entirely, and you realize it was never coming, and you just start walking. Owen and I had a short honeymoon plan for the following week, a long weekend in Asheville. We came back on a Tuesday. I took Wednesday off work. On Thursday morning, I sat down at my kitchen table with a coffee and my laptop, and I started making a list. The first thing on the list was a personal loan I'd taken out 3 years ago, $7,000. Because my parents had needed help with a roof repair and hadn't had the credit for the contractor's financing. I was still paying it off. My name, my credit, my monthly payment. The second thing was a credit card. A secondary card on my account that my mom had been using for small things, groceries, gas, her gym membership. She paid me back sporadically, not always the full amount. The third thing was Eli's Venmo, where I had a recurring reminder I'd set up myself to transfer $1,400 on the first of every month. I called the loan company first. They were straightforward about it. Yes, I could set up a formal repayment request to another party, or I could simply stop. The loan was mine. The obligation was mine. I could do what I wanted with it. I called my bank. I removed my mom from the secondary card. I didn't cancel the card. I just removed her access. I went into Venmo and deleted the recurring transfer. Then I wrote a letter, not an email. An actual letter, printed out. I'm not sure why I chose that. Maybe because it felt more real. Maybe because I wanted there to be something they'd have to hold in their hands. It wasn't mean. I want to be clear about that. I didn't call anyone names. I didn't list grievances in bullet points. I just said, I love this family. I have shown that love in specific, financial, consistent ways for 4 years. I did it willingly and I don't regret it. But I got married last weekend, and the people I have quietly kept afloat chose a lake house over my wedding day. I need you to know that I saw that. And I need things to change. I said I would be happy to talk when everyone was ready to talk honestly. I mailed 3 copies, one to my parents' house, one to my aunt's address where I knew they were staying another few days, one to Eli's apartment in LA. Then I closed my laptop and went for a walk. My mom called on Saturday morning, not to talk. That became clear very quickly. She called to tell me that the card had been declined at the grocery store and that something must be wrong with it and could I look into it. I told her I'd removed her from the account. There was a silence. Then she asked why. I said, Did you get my letter? She said it hadn't arrived yet. I said, It will. Another silence. She said, This isn't like you. I thought about that for a second. I thought about 4 years of $800 turning into $1,400. I thought about the loan with my name on it. I thought about eating rice and frozen vegetables and saying I'm fine. Maybe you don't know me as well as you think, I said. Not mean, just true. She hung up. My dad called an hour later. His tone was different, less confused, more hard. He said I was being selfish. He said I was being selfish. He said I was pinging the family for a scheduling conflict. A scheduling conflict. That's what he called it. I said, I want to talk about this properly. But I can't do that right now, on the phone, with you this upset. He said, When, then? I said, when you're ready to actually listen. He said he was always ready to listen. I said, okay. Then hear this. I have been contributing financially to this family for 4 years. I did not ask for anything in return except to have you at my wedding. That was the one thing I asked for. He didn't say anything. I'm not gone, I said. I'm not cutting anyone off. I stopped doing the one thing I was doing because I can't keep doing it the same way. That's all. He said he needed time to think. I said, okay. We hung up. I sat with the quiet for a while. It wasn't comfortable. I want to be honest about that. It wasn't some triumphant moment where I felt powerful. It felt like grief mostly, like standing in a room where the furniture used to be and trying to figure out what you actually want to put there. Eli texted 3 days after that. Not about the money. He didn't mention the money directly. He said he'd gotten the letter and that he thought I was going through something and that he was there if I wanted to talk. I almost laughed. I wrote back, I'm not going through something. I'm thinking clear, probably for the first time in a few years. I'm glad to talk whenever you're ready to talk about what I actually said in the letter. He left it on read. That was 6 weeks ago. My mom showed up at our apartment on a Sunday. This was maybe 2 weeks after the calls with my dad. I could hear her in the hallway before Owen even got to the door. Not screaming, but her voice was sharp and high in the way it gets when she's past upset and into something else. She was talking to Owen before I reached the door. I heard him say, calm and even, she's right here. Let me get her. I opened the door the rest of the way. My mom looked at me. She still had a slight tan from the lake house trip. Her hair was different. She'd gotten it cut while she was away, apparently. She looked at me and said, how could you do this to us? I didn't answer right away. I stepped back and opened the door wider and asked if she wanted to come in. She came in. Owen made himself scarce in the way that he does, not gone, just giving us space, present somewhere nearby. I sat down at the kitchen table. She sat across from me. I let her talk first. She talked for a while about how much they'd done for me growing up, about how the Nashville trip had been planned before I'd set the wedding date. This turned out not to be true, but I let her finish. About how I was hurting Eli's future, about how the film project was important to him, about how I was making the family look bad. I listened to all of it. Then I said, Mom, I paid for 6 semesters of Eli's school. I covered the roof. I had a credit card that was being used as a household account. I did all of that because I love you and I wanted to help. But I got married 11 days ago and you weren't there. That's what I need you to hear. Not everything else, just that. She looked at the table. I said, I'm not trying to punish you. I'm not going anywhere. But I can't keep arranging my life around helping this family if the family doesn't show up for mine. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, very quietly, I didn't think you'd actually notice. And I realized that was it. That was the whole thing, right there. She hadn't thought I'd notice, because I never had before. Because I had spent 4 years being so quietly competent and so carefully unbothered that everyone around me had simply assumed I'd absorb whatever happened and keep going. I felt a lot of things in that moment. Sad, mostly. A little tired, but not angry, not anymore. I notice, I said. I always noticed. I just didn't say anything. She nodded slowly like she was filing something away. We didn't resolve everything that afternoon. That would be a cleaner ending than the truth. She left about an hour later, and we hugged stiffly, but we hugged. My dad called the next evening, and the conversation was shorter and more careful, like we were both trying not to say the wrong thing. We're still in that phase, honestly. Still careful. Still finding the edges of whatever this new arrangement is going to look like. Eli hasn't called. I'm not chasing that one. Owen asked me recently how I was feeling about all of it. We were in the kitchen making dinner, his night to cook, which meant something with pasta and whatever vegetables needed to be used up. I was sitting on the counter watching him. I told him I felt okay. Mostly. He said, what's the not mostly part? I thought about it. I think I'm grieving a version of my family that I made up, I said. Like who I thought we were to each other. I built this whole idea about what we were and I kept paying into it. Literally. Like if I just kept contributing, maybe it would become real. And it didn't. He stirred the pasta. That's a really human thing to do, he said. It's also a really expensive thing to do, I said. He laughed. I laughed. We had dinner. I'm not telling the story because I want anyone to feel sorry for me. I'm really not. I had a beautiful wedding. I married someone who makes coffee for me before I'm awake and who said, on the worst version of what should have been a good day, you don't have to pretend this doesn't hurt. That's not nothing. That's enormous. I'm telling it because I spent 4 years being so afraid of the word no that I built an entire financial architecture around my family's comfort at the cost of my own. I didn't do it because anyone forced me. I did it because I loved them. But love isn't the same as unlimited access. And you can love people completely and still say, this is where I stop. The Venmo transfer didn't go out on the 1st of this month or last month. Nobody said thank you. But nobody fell apart either. I keep thinking about what my mom said I didn't think you'd actually notice. I think that might be the most important sentence I've heard in years. Not because it was cruel, though it was, a little, but because it told me exactly what I needed to hear about how I'd been moving through the world. Invisible, useful, easy to take for granted. I notice now. I'm going to keep noticing. If you're someone who's been carrying something like this, quietly, on your own, rearranging yourself around people who don't rearrange anything for you, I hope this finds you on a day when you're ready to put the bag down. And if your family is the kind that shows up genuinely, not just when it's convenient, I hope you tell them, not in a big way, just, I see you. I'm glad you're here. Would you have done what I did? I'm genuinely curious. Drop it in the comments. I read every one. There's something nobody tells you about being the reliable one in a family. They tell you it's noble. They tell you it's what good people do. What they don't tell you is that reliability, when it goes unreciprocated long enough, stops being a virtue and starts being a habit you can't see anymore. Like a door you've walked through so many times you forget it's even there. I didn't realize how much I'd given until I sat at my own kitchen table the Thursday after my honeymoon and wrote it all down. Not in an emotional way. Just facts, numbers, dates. And looking at that list, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not anger, not sadness. Clarity. The kind that comes when you finally stop moving long enough to see where you actually are. I think about cause and effect a lot now. Not in a mystical way, just the plain mechanical truth that every choice has a consequence that eventually shows up, whether you're watching for it or not. I made a choice for 4 years to keep giving without asking anything in return. That choice had a consequence. The people I was giving to learned that I would always give, no matter what. They learned it so well that they didn't even think to show up for my wedding. They didn't think I'd notice. That's not cruelty. It's just what happens when you train people to expect you to absorb everything quietly. And then I made a different choice. I stopped. Not out of spite, but out of something closer to self respect. Maybe the first real act of self respect I'd made in years. And that choice had consequences too. My mom showed up at my door. My dad had a hard conversation with me for the first time in maybe ever. Eli went quiet in a way that told me more than anything he could have said. What I keep coming back to is this: being good at something doesn't mean you owe it to people indefinitely. I was good at holding things together. I was good at being steady when everyone else wasn't. But goodness isn't a debt you keep paying forever. At some point, it has to be a choice you make freely, with full knowledge of what it costs you. Not a reflex, not a fear, not the path of least resistance. The hardest part of all of this wasn't stopping the transfers or removing my mom from the card or mailing those letters. The hardest part was sitting with the discomfort of being seen differently, of being the one who said no, of not smoothing it over, not calling to apologize, not making it easier for everyone else at my own expense. That's the part that takes something. That's where the real work is. Owen asked me once if I regretted any of it. The 4 years of helping. I had to think about it honestly, and the answer is no. Not the helping itself. I'd do it again, probably. But I'd do it with a voice. I'd do it in a way where I also said, "This is what I need back." I'd do it as a two-way thing. If I've learned anything from the last few months, it's that love without accountability isn't love. It's just habit. And the people who matter, the ones worth keeping, they'll stay even when you start asking for something in return. Owen stayed. Stellar drove 4 hours. That's what I'm building on now. Everything else I'm learning to let be exactly what it is.